Alright, hello and welcome back to Ashgabat Cat, so let's play that. Today we're taking a look at funkyjet. This looks like a game where it might make sense to pay attention to the controls. Knock 'em out. That's the kind of control I want to see. Okay. Yeah. Sure. Let's go with that. Set the stage. Unfortunately, I'll start off with the starter stage, but I do kind of wish I could get to some of the cooler later stages. Okay, so if you're only one player, then the change player button just makes you spin around ineffectually. Is there any sort of... Okay, you press up to... There's no jump, you just press up to go up, which, I mean, again, kid logic, but kids could probably make good video games if they tried. Right, let's turn this down a little bit. I can barely hear myself think. Did you see that? They did the West Side Story snapping their fingers. Okay, that's pretty great. Now I gotta say, the backgrounds to this game are just absolutely fantastic. And then the gameplay, well, it's basic, but it gets the job done. And then just the gameplay is, I mean, actually doing the gameplay is kind of a little bit boring, but the actual, like, gameplay itself is very easy to understand. It's very clear what it is you're doing. The enemies are bright and colorful, and assuming the enemy variety keeps on up, I think we're looking at a pretty good game on our hands, and that's somewhat unfortunate because I'd never heard of this game before. If I had known this game would have been this good, maybe I wouldn't have underrated it. I mean, I heard, like, funkyjet, it's like, oh, this one's gonna be weird. And, well, it's partially weird, but it's not weird in a bad way. So I guess, yeah, this game, Boogie Wings and funkyjet. Kinda two peas in a pod, I suppose. There's not much similar about them other than their naming scheme, but sometimes that's all you need. And then Dangun Feveron, which doesn't sound like it'd be funky, but then you start playing it and it's a completely disco-themed shoot-'em-up, and you're like, you know what, I see how this fits into the whole funky theme. Now, is it me, or does the whole fact that you're in like an arena with multiple stages feel like Pang? Hey, no fair, he can spin too. That was my exclusive ability. So, does spinning hurt me? I don't think so. And so in a weird twist of generosity, in this beat-em-up, spinning does not hurt you. Now, I think the trick is, like, it's not as powerful, so you can't really, like, knock the enemies away. Oh, weird. as we hit him more and more, he turns all weird shades of, well, the rainbow, quite frankly. Again, that's not necessarily unprecedented. I mean, Samurai Showdown, your characters would turn more red as they got angrier and their special gauge went up. But it's kind of interesting to see it here. I just love that little sprite work of him shooting. Oh, wow. So we are moving along at a decent click, and we are going to get to see some of these really cool looking... Wow. Who made this game? How did they hide this game for so long? Like, you could release the sprite works alone as probably make some sort of collector's edition coffee book. I would consider buying it. Actually, even better, you can make a special print run. You go to that website that makes prints out of pictures, submit all of them in high resolution, and then let him make a book out of it, or let him make a whole print run out of this. I mean, this artwork is good enough. It's like I could totally see decorating my apartment with a whole bunch of these pictures. Now, the music is a little more muddled in this stage, but it's no less engaging. It's kind of weird. We almost have, like, sort of a 1950s, but, like, sort of also a 1950s that's heard of modernish rock. Well, by modernish rock, I mean, like, 60s, maybe early 70s, but again, more big band than Hendrix, you know? But still, wow. Enemy variety doing its thing. Well, I guess those robot arm guys are actually just a regular enemy. which is weird because they're way bigger, and they seem like they'd be a lot more ferocious. But I think the deal is they're just regular enemies, no more, no less. It's weird, they do look like bosses of some kind. Now, can we charge up or something? No. Oh, interesting. Gravity slowly does its work. So if you just stand still, then you slowly fall down. And I just noticed the time limit in the upper center, and I'm pretty sure that when that runs out, you're gonna lose a life. Because again, our arcade machine operator's gotta make a profit too. Ooh, this guy again. It already beat you. Oh, not fair. He cheated. Okay. Oh, double attack. That's unprecedented. Where'd he go? Okay. I see. We gotta actually... So one, he does a double attack, and two, you actually have to make him crash into something now. Although, apparently I just got an extra life? Wow. I mean, again, easy come, easy go, but still, easy come part is something I don't quite understand, or wouldn't quite expect. Ooh, ooh. Oh, I don't think those are lives. I'm pretty sure those are like a power-up of some kind. Oh, that was not a life. I guess lives are something else. But you can power up, and if you get enough of those canisters, your guy just goes windmill crazy. That's kind of fun. That is kind of fun. Final scene, good luck. Just in case you couldn't quite tell. Final scene, good luck. Oh, the falling boxes do hurt you. Oh, wow. I wonder if this is where the special stage of Smash Bros. 4 came from. You know, the one that lets you earn more trophies, and you gotta break the boxes as they fall down. This would be like the most obscure game for them to reference and do with, but I don't know. Nintendo, their references go deep, so you never know. But, yikes. I also like how the boxes do essentially no damage, but they do significant psychological damage. I also like how this guy just shoves out his knife and then jumps, and it's like, he knows what's what. You know, I'm beginning to think it's almost worth it to like get hit by the boxes rather than actually break them, because you break them and you unleash the enemies, which do way more damage to you than the boxes could ever hope and dream of. Mostly because they're inanimate objects, but still. Oh, jeez, and you can't even... I mean, say what you will about that boss, but as dumb as his strategy is, it is brutally effective. You know what? I'm just gonna hang out up here. These boxes be darned. Oh, they open automatically, or what? But yeah, say what you will about that boss's strategy, but it is brutally effective, because you try to approach him from the front, and he is having none of it. Unfortunately, he's got more than enough henchmen. Okay, now I see why you killed the henchman, because otherwise you're going to be completely overwhelmed. If you kill the henchman as you go, then you are only slightly overwhelmed. Well, one more canister, and then I can go wicked haymill on the next guy. Well, how much you want to bet the canisters reset stage to stage? Oh, is there more? I can see a slight sprite bleeding on the right, leading me to believe that there is another 8 stages. That's probably too much. No. I guess it's 5 canisters to go crazy. Oh, wow. These guys, yeah. Big enemies means watch out, they're strong. Which is kind of interesting, because sometimes in real life, really tall people are kind of the weakest people, actually. That's not entirely true, but if they're like giant bean poles, then I wouldn't watch out. Now, if they're big and Andre the Giant sized, then you gotta watch out for them. I love how they take the time to just kind of do a little West Side Story before we get down to business. I also like how you can use enemies as projectile attacks and hurt other enemies with it. And then they also give you a spin attack crowd control for free, and it's like, they're doing that because it's more of a taunt than an actual benefit, because it's like they know you're not going to make use of the spin attack. Because the way enemies are set up, if you can actually hit them, then you send them out as a projectile, and then you're going to clear the whole wave anyway. Oh yeah, immediately lose my special power. Although, spin to win. Oh, I thought you got multiple lives per... Oh. It only lasts like 4 seconds. It's so not worth it. I mean, it's partially made up for the fact that, like, it requires essentially no conscious effort on your part, but still, like, you only get the power up for 4 seconds, so it's incredibly disappointing. Oh, what is that guy coming in? Sneaking in with a machine gun. Oh, and they keep on respawning a la Gauntlet. Great, just what I wanted from this game. More enemies. I'm starting to see how, like, we breezed through the first 2 stages, but the next few stages are gonna take their dear sweet time. Still though, we've got Aurora Borealis heading on to the background. We got some weird future, and it's this guy again, just who I wanted to see. You know, I'm just gonna speed through this as much as I can, because I mean... Oh, interesting. So when he charges you, you can just punch him in the head? Which makes sense from, like, a real-life perspective. But it doesn't 100% make sense from a game perspective. So it's like, what is this guy's game plan? He just runs at you head first? I assume he's supposed to be some sort of comedic villain. If anything, he's more of an indicator of when it's the boss next. Yeah, 7 credits. What the heck? I just added more credits. Nope, doesn't seem to do anything. Okay. Huh. Well, this seems like one of the easiest bosses I've ever fought. I mean, it's not easy to beat it without taking damage. But if you're willing to break a few eggs, then it's pretty easy to make a few eggs, metaphorically speaking. Weird. Well, I mean, it's always kind of interesting when you fight an inanimate object as a boss. I mean, sometimes maybe it's like a sentient helicopter, some nonsense like that, but this one just seems to be a tin can that enemies kind of pop out of. Interesting. Simple, but interesting. Alright, stage... Select stage 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Yeah, that confused me too, at once. Only 6 stages. Yeah, right, only 6 stages. I'm guessing... I'll bet you there's at least 8 stages. Now don't go switching to the end of the video and checking. That's not fair to me, because it's like, I gotta play through it in real time. I'm just kidding, go ahead and do whatever you want. This is YouTube. No rules. Well, no rules if you don't want to monetize. If you want to monetize your videos, there are plenty of... Well, that was a waste. I mean, I know it only lasts for 4 seconds, so it's essentially a waste in the first place, but come on. That is just a double waste. Unacceptable waste. Unacceptably wasteful. Well, I will say, one thing I don't 100% like about Pang and maybe Bubble Bobble is that it's kind of hard to move from platform to platform. So giving the guy a jetpack actually kind of really helps things, because it's... I mean, you wouldn't think it, because usually jetpacks in video games are not easy to control whatsoever, but this jetpack kind of controls precisely how you'd want it to. We're not a... Wait, was Scramble a guy in a jetpack? It wasn't, but it makes me think it was somehow. I feel like there was a game that used the same controls as Scramble, which is to say, you press one button to go higher, and then one button to go lower. Oh my gosh, an armed guy on the ground floor? This is the stuff nightmares are made of. Whoa, somebody's going Iron Man on these guys. It won't last, but while it does, I'm gonna enjoy it. But yeah, the jetpack, you use directions to actually control the jetpack. It's not like you hold down a jetpack button and then you go up on the jetpack. And so that just goes a long, long way towards overall maneuverability and usability and, honestly, customer satisfaction. Now, well, because I mean, on one hand, the controls are easy, so it's like you gotta ask yourself, how are the arcade operators making their quarters? Or how are the arcade machine manufacturers make their quarters when they sell them to the arcade operators? It's the arcade operators who really care about them quarters. And so, how are they making their quarters? Pretty much just by making the enemies really cheap. I mean, the controls aren't getting in your way, nothing's really getting in your way. It's pretty much just the onslaught of enemies. Yeah, you were significantly less, like, intimidating now that I know that I can hit you just from a standstill. So pretty much I just have to get to him. Or even if I don't, he'll come to me. And it's like, wow, how convenient. Like, I haven't even had fast food this convenient in a long time. Because at least fast food, it's like you still have to go to the fast food restaurant. This guy comes to you. In fact, you don't even have to order. It's not like Chipotle delivery where you basically hire an Uber to deliver your food. And it's like, yeah, you can get food delivered, I guess. In the same way a person can travel to the moon. Not easily and not for cheap, but it can be done. That's kind of funny. These guys, they throw their mohawks at you. These guys would also be significantly more disappointing if I actually had to pay for my quarters, but you know, the arcade owners subsidizing my quarter usage in exchange for this quote-unquote review. I know it's not a review, don't tell them that. Anyway, it's kind of interesting. It's sort of like Oddjob's hat, except more punk rock. But I mean, the same concept. It's just kind of silly if you're making a head boomerang. Why would you choose to make it like a mohawk? Well, if you want to know why, you better ask the Kirby people, because they did that also with Kirby. Wait, it's at stage 5, but now we're in stage... Did we not get a select? But we did get a select the first one. Who cares? This is a game that we're gonna play through the whole thing anyway, so who cares what we call the stages? We're just gonna call them stage 1 through all. Yep, yeah. Because the thing about beat-em-ups is, if you really want to make your quarters, you essentially have to focus on making your enemies, like, impossible to defeat without taking damage. Now, you do not, if you're making a beat-em-up, want to make them impossible to defeat. That is rookie mistake number 1. Instead, you make the enemies easy to defeat, but hard to defeat without taking any damage whatsoever. And so what happens is, your character just kind of takes a little chip damage here, a little chip damage there. You have one character that's like, does really punishing hits or something. That's not a problem. The players will forgive you for that if it's every now and then. And so, what you do is you just chip them down, and then over time, attrition, and that's how you win your quarters the semi-fair beat-em-up arcade owner way. Now, obviously, that's not 100% fair, but again, it's an arcade game. What are you expecting? You gotta pay your money somehow. It's just like a casino. It's like the house always wins. It's like, well, you just gotta figure out how the house is winning and then try to beat them at their own game, but you can't because they set it up so you're gonna lose. And then with a beat 'em up, you just kind of focus on like making small bits of attrition and making the game as long as possible. You want to see like real pros at the genre, check out Capcom. Like Final Fight, that is like 50,000 stages. Like they released Final Fight for the Game Boy Advance, and oh my god, Final Fight without like putting in quarters, it's the most mindless thing ever. Although it was kind of interesting, you could like unlock certain upgrades as you went on, like as you fought, you earned like fighting points or some nonsense, and so you could use them in exchange for like various power-ups and things, and one of the things was like A-button auto-fire. And it does make the game significantly easier, but again, just that game is like 1,500 levels. Just make your game super long, have your guy take attrition every now and then that's your golden secret for quarters. It's like don't try to fleece the players out of their money real fast. It's like you take too many quarters in too short a time frame, they're gonna wise up. Instead, go for the boiling a lobster in a pot strategy. It's like just increase the heat so slowly that they don't even know that they're a lobster in a pot being boiled. Speaking of being a lobster in a pot being boiled, I've probably inputted enough credits that I could probably buy a lobster dinner at this point. Let's see, are we on the football guy yet? Oh, you can press A to speed things up, which is interesting. You know, now that I think about it, the arcade operator's almost explicitly stated goal is to earn as many quarters as possible. And so why don't more arcade machines have like a fast forward feature, where you fast forward through all the stuff that won't earn the arcade operator credits, which players usually term the boring scoring stuff, and then you get straight back into the action. That is kind of interesting. Why don't they do that more? I think they do that sometimes. And there's the football guy. He tries. Lord almighty, does he try. He does not succeed, though. I see to that. Well, at least he makes up for a nice break in the tension. And it is kind of nice to have, like, this sort of breather boss right before the real people boss. It's not good on a saving credits kind of way, but it's kind of nice in a narrative sort of tension sort of way. Like, if you've ever watched Revolutionary Girl Utena, like, every time they go in the dream sequence, like, the actual battles themselves are very, very surreal, and those just kind of, like, drive you crazy. But before that, they do the shadow puppets, and so it's like every time before the boss fight, they show you the shadow puppet. And so it's like by framing the thing appropriately, then it kind of makes more context. Even if, like, the actual fight itself is completely bonkers and doesn't make any sense. Like, one of them was just them driving a car around the ring. Does that make sense? Like, can you imagine a shonen battle anime where they battle by driving a car? That's like, not even JoJo gets that crazy. Although who knows, there is a whole season of JoJo that's left to be adapted into the anime, so who knows? And of course, that was the one in Japanese, so I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't even think Duane got their hands on that one. So, more wonders to see. Anyway, these guys, not much to see here, although they do have a genius tactic whereby they rapidly change their elevation every time you punch them. Frustrating, but intelligent. Yeah, that is kind of weird. It's like a lot of boss enemies, they just kind of just stand there waiting for you to punch them. And okay, they let you get your licks in. They get, like, they take 2-3 hits and then they fall back or something, get some sort of invincibility. But then they get right back up and they start charging you like some sort of wild boar, incapable of learning, incapable of reason, incapable of induction. Well, this looks like the final stage, but as I've been saying this whole time, don't expect it to be. And so, what the heck? Is that a little baby in a... Oh, okay. So I knew the enemies in the game would be a little wacky, arguably a little funky, but a baby and a robot that kind of attacks you, that reminds me a little too much of Porky from Earthbound. It's like, what is this nonsense? Okay, so there are obviously enemies hiding in those barrels, but I guess we don't actually have to go through the hassle of fighting them. So I guess in a sense, restraint is the name of the game. So if we are restrained enough that we don't destroy any of the... Even the little grenades have funky shades. That is awesome. There's just so much in this game to love. Like, some arcade games, they kind of try to make do with their gameplay, and it's like, that kind of works, but you have to be careful because games are very tricky to design. Like, even designing a game is hard enough, and then actually getting a programmer to program it is another thing too, because programmers, they like money, so you gotta pay them. But even then, you need to have somebody who actually knows what good gameplay feels like, and they need to adjust the parameters just right. Because, I mean, if you think about it, like, a lot of things kind of are, like, obvious at first level. It's like, okay, you punch an enemy, they should move backwards. Yeah, okay. So, like, you gotta show them taking damage in sort of a visceral way, so that the player kind of understands what's happening. But how far back should they go? Because if they go too far back, then the player's just gonna have to punch them over and over, like, they're gonna have to chase them. And it's like, that's no fun. The player's not gonna have fun with that. It's like, yeah, like, punching them, they'd feel strong, but then when they have to chase them every time, they're just gonna feel annoyed. And so you gotta kind of calibrate that just right. And it's like, also, how fast should the punch be? Should it be 1 frame, 2 frames, 3 frames, 5 frames? Like, the more frames, the more animation, but the longer it takes, the less snappy your controls feel, and then you don't want your players to feel like they're not in control. But then it's even more it's even weirder because, like, your game, it's running on some sort of CPU. It's like you can't overwhelm the CPU. You can't make too much stuff be happening. And so you've got to kind of handle, like, the inputs. You can't take too many inputs too fast. Why do I waste my power-ups like that? I knew it was going to waste. Oh, weird. So each stage, 604. I just realized they all have numbers. They all, in theory, have finite time. Oh, look who it is. So, like, He finally came to his senses. Football guy realized he could never actually beat us in a fair one-on-one fight. Well, not that he knows what a fair one-on-one fight is, considering he always fights you with his minions. But, so now what he's going to do is he's going to send his minions while the other guy sends his minions at us. In theory, overwhelming us, in practice, just basically doing nothing. I am actually really impressed with the handling. So, yes, there were platforms, but the platforms are for the enemies. They aren't for you at all. Now, usually in a game like this, the platforms would actually kind of hang you up a little bit. Well, okay, typically, if you're playing like a Pang or a Bubble Ball or something, your platforms are your key to verticality, and so you need the platforms. But in this game, you've got the jetpack for verticality, so what do you need platforms for? You don't. But more importantly, the platforms don't affect you in any negative sort of way. Yeah, that's something that this game does really, really right. Like, there's not many things that negatively impact you. There's not many things that make you feel like you're losing control. They just kind of take your credits in the most old-fashioned, arguably the fairest way, by just overwhelming you with semi-cheap enemies. But in terms of the actual day-to-day gameplay, it's pretty nice. It's actually pretty forgiving. Oh wow, so you can even punch them as they run towards you. Not that you necessarily need to or anything, but... yeah, there's not much to say. You'd think this guy would get a little harder, but he doesn't. He doesn't ever learn his lesson. I wonder if you can do a Hadouken or something. Uh-oh. There's no floor. This would be more overwhelming if we didn't have a jetpack. Oh, I see. We can punch them into the guy? Interesting. But again, because we care not for money, unlike this corporate fat cat, then we can just go straight to the heart of the matter. I wonder if spinning is actually better. Maybe it is. Maybe spinning marginally is better. Oh, can't let him die. Well, was that the final battle? Why were we fighting? Questions that need to be answered. Will there be an ending screen? Yeah. 6 stages is too few stages. Just ask Mega Man. Mega Man had the least stages of any Mega Man game. Mega Man 1 for the Nintendo. Had the least stages of any Mega Man game, and even that one had more than 6 stages. I mean, come on. Your players are paying good money to play this game. Also, what exactly is this stage? Now that I take a good look at it, it looks like, what, some sort of corporate dystopia? Taken over by the guy? Also, they are giving us a lot of power-ups. I am getting very suspicious now. And there aren't even any big enemies either. This leads me to believe there will be a big multi-stage boss fight. Heck, there might even... no, never mind. That's why they were being so nice, because they could be mean later. Remember when I said this game is completely fair? You know what? This game is obviously taking shortcuts with our time. Let's take some shortcuts too. Okay, there's essentially no shortcut because the spin attack does essentially no damage. So it's like, well, you can't really get anywhere. Although, oh, cool. So the time power-up freezes them. Which probably explains why we haven't seen the time power-up until now. It's like by far the most powerful of the power-ups. Yeah, these knife guys. Although, arguably I'd say the knife guys are... I can't tell if they're more or less imposing than the long arm guys. So on one hand, they do get in your face, but on the other hand, they're not like attacking you from halfway across the screen. But I think, yeah, definitely in this context when they are just bum rushing the heck out of you, no, they're powerful. And I think, yeah, if you want to be a pro at this game, you have to kind of figure out how you can have some enemies attack into other enemies. Basically, how you can do more work with less effort. Of course, that's how you become a pro at almost everything in life, but... well, this was an easy stage. I cleared it. Alright, let's... you know it, I know it. There are enemies hidden in the barrels, but let's go through the motions at the very least. The power-up, it's gone. Well, at least... oh, jetpack. Of course, I'm gonna break all the barrels and cause way more problems than... Well, that was surprisingly effective for one of those wind makers. Or haymakers. Let's see. Well, is he gonna finally learn his lesson and not be vulnerable when he charges me? Nope. Still didn't learn his lesson. Couldn't even buy thicker helmets. You'd think he'd buy like a better helmet. Because it's like, I'm beating him up all the time. I probably broke his helmet. It's like, come on, man. At least buy a bigger helmet. Not that I necessarily want to see this guy become more ferocious. I mean, again, he serves his purpose as he is, and he needs to be weak to serve that purpose, but... I mean, he could at least do something different. I could have sworn there was a difference between the first time he showed up and the second time he showed up. Oh! So I was mentioning Mega Man earlier. Apparently, they are going full Mega Man with a whole boss rush. And then there's going to be a boss rush, and then the final boss, maybe? On the bright side, this boss doesn't seem to be any harder than he was before, although the enemies accompanying him are harder, so in that sense, I suppose he is harder. And he doesn't seem to take as much he doesn't let you give him as much damage in between vulnerability cycles. And so he kind of flitters away a little too soon. Okay, that's strange. Is it a random order? I don't think spin attack goes any faster. Well, we can test this. And again, there's no screen clearing bombs, so I don't feel so bad about, like, completely abusing my quarters. Because again, like, the game's gonna completely abuse its enemies, so I mean, the only weapon I have to fight back with are the quarters. So, I gotta do my part. Fight back. Oh, so apparently that was not a boss rush. That one guy was just that one guy. Okay. So I guess same principle as before, just bigger enemies. You probably also take more damage, but who's keeping track? Again, I've got all the power I need right here in my wallet. Well, I guess technically it's the arcade owner's wallet. And, well, that was that. There's no way that's the final stage. So what's next? Like, I don't know, he makes a giant robot guy with his face in the middle? Like, the Teletubby to end all Teletubbies? Oh, no, never mind. It's Mr. Corporation himself. So why is our intrepid hero fighting against this guy anyway? Like, what possible reason could he have? Is he trying to ban like funk music or something? And so our jet guy is like, that will not stand. Funk music needs to last forever. Of course, our characters surely no envoy of funk music, at least not dressed like, well, frankly, a bad 90s rapper. Jeez. Yeah, you'd think this would be the easiest boss stage, because it's like, oh, it's him. It's not even a computer screen, but nope. He has the cheapest pattern. Like, again, that's just pure fighting or beat 'em up boss construction. It's like, make it so their attacks are like almost literally undodgeable. And then make them so they're essentially invulnerable while they do anything. And then just so long as it's the final boss and not... No, you can't even dodge him by going up, because like he flies up. He's gonna get you no matter what. Is he dead? Or is now when we figure out that like an alien space flea has possessed him this whole time and we have to fight him instead? Cack. Hi, it's Ashgabat Cat. Fine. Maybe we could play it off and say like cake. I was jonesing for some cake, and so that's why I chose cake. Huh. So that's that then. Let's reset and then see if there's anything on the intro screen, but huh. So yeah, I mean, if there's nothing more in the intro stream, that was it. Like, literally no explanation of the story whatsoever. Like we're just fighting the bad guy because, I don't know, he looks like a fat capitalist or something. But it's like, if you think about it, if you invest in stocks at all, it's like fat capitalists are your best friends. Because it's like they're the ones making you money. And then you say, oh, but fat capitalists are ruthlessly obsessed with greed. And it's like, hey man, greed increases the values of your stocks. And so it's like, hey, if you enjoy making more money, then it's like, well, maybe you're the fat capitalist too. And it's like, oh, but you say, oh, but I'm not fat. It's like, give it a few years. Give it a few years. But I guess the only story is beat them up because they seem bad. In fact, how do we know we're even the hero of the story? For all we know, we could be the bad guys. We could be like some sort of domestic terrorist or something, just kind of breaking up the world. We're like, oh yeah, we're funkyjet. It's like, yeah, you can call it whatever you want, but that doesn't make you the good guy. Strange. Change position. So does that mean if you have two people playing, then like you can't do the spin attack? You have to change positions with them? Well, that doesn't entirely make sense either. Weird. So they put all their focus on making the game like playable in the background of the backgrounds of the stages. But they put absolutely no effort into the story, which honestly, that's a fair trade-off. If I want a story, I should just read a novel, but it's like, you want to play a game. You want to play an honest-to-goodness gamey game, and you boot this game up and you start playing it. So, yeah, I'd say time well spent. I don't know, it always seems unfair. It's like all these reviewers, they're all like, oh, this game is a terrible story, and oh, this game's story is hackneyed, and it's like, dude, you don't, if you really cared about story, you'd watch something at least a tier up on the story depth chart. I mean, at least movies even are a tier up above games and stories. Now, that's not to say a game cannot tell a story, but I feel like that's not primarily what games are for. That's not primarily what games should be about. And really, if you think about it, a lot of the best game stories, they're not necessarily told by the gameplay. They're just basically told on the side as though you get like a game and a movie semi-simultaneously. It's like you think RPGs and their cutscenes, and it's like the cutscenes are basically an extended movie. And so, really, it's more like the movie of the cutscenes that's telling the story. It's not so much the game media. That's not to say the gameplay itself cannot tell a story. Like, if you've ever played Football Manager, so that game, you're managing like a football team, and so like they play and they win, they lose, you kind of manage them, you have to hire all the players, you fire the bad ones, you have to choose who is going to play in each game, you have to choose what tactics they use. And over time, just through playing that, it's like you can actually create a story. And I guess it's sort of like that emergent gameplay, or Shadow of Mordor, although I've never played it, I have heard about it, where you kind of have this one, it's sort of like an otherwise normal action RPG, but not all of the enemies are generic. In fact, like, there's like a huge roster of orcs that you fight against, and then like as you kill them, like some of them hold grudges against you, and some of them become very special and like fight you. And so in this way, like, the gameplay mechanics tie very nicely into making like some sort of story, some sort of narrative, and through that way you can actually tell a story through the gameplay. But it's only the very rare game that actually tells a story through its gameplay. They mostly just tell it through like either words, which is an established medium, film, visuals, which is an established medium, through sound, which honestly, pure sound in terms of like music, instrumentals and stuff, it's like, I've always found that to be a very abstract way to tell a story. It's like sometimes you play like Vivaldi or something, you're like, oh yeah, this one's about the changing of the seasons and the farmer who loses his job and it has to do, and it's like, I can't hear any of that. All I hear is that sometimes it shifts from like one motif to another, and it's like, okay, I can abstractly imagine a story, but if you ask me to name specifically, it's like, oh, it's this farmer in the field. It's like, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. So, okay, maybe games are like a tier above like raw instrumental audio in telling story. That being said, like, is it necessarily a limitation of the gaming medium itself? Or is it just an ineptitude of the makers, or the people who make games? Now, okay, ineptitude is a fairly charged word, But I do kind of feel like if you compare, like, for example, novels today to novels from, like, the very beginning, in a sense, like English language, so Chaucer. Like, you compare the novels today to, like, Chaucer or something, and it's just worlds apart. There's just been so much progress, just been so much thinking about how to make novels, how to set novels up, and it's like the medium has just changed, like, unrecognizably, and, like, the storytelling methods and the stories that you can tell with that medium have just changed so much. So how do we know that in another 200 years, we won't look at the games now and just say it's like they're just such an elementary storytelling medium, and then their games just somehow tell everything in their story? Now, obviously, I can't tell you how they do it because, again, no one can predict the future. But it's just kind of something to think about. It's like, how can we tell stories through games, just pure gameplay, in the future? That being said, this game is not going to tell you. So on that note, this cat's got a scat.